My warm salutations to my Guru Vedatri Maharshi, my Guru Satyamurthy Ayya from Ooty, my parents, my community leaders Dr. R. Annamalai Murugeshan and Mr. C. Reddy Kumar, and my friends, both Aravinds and the press, my warm salutations to everyone. Today's my topic is E is equal to mw square, definition of physics for 21st century and beyond. This title disproves the 360 years science. It disproves gravity, Newton's gravity, Einstein's gravity, Stephen Hawking's black holes, Higgs boson, and most of the important theories. First, let us see from the gravity from Newton's theory of gravity. Here, the main aim is to answer if sun collapses or dies, what happens, what Newton told, what Einstein told, and what my theory will be telling. During the year 1692-93, Newton wrote a letter to Dr. Bentley, and he stated very clearly that in gravity, you sometimes talk about gravity. He mentions about the Bentley. You sometimes talk about gravity as essential and inherent to matter. Pray do not ascribe the notion to me, for the cause I do not reality. They all are trash. However, these are the finest theory what we have, and this made me motivated. And after that, Vedatri from India, Tamil Nadu, Pollachi, he discovered not only space is acting on the mass is also acting on the space is also acting on the mass. But Einstein was not able to predict or discover that space is acting in the mass. Now let us see what happens at the end of my talk. You have to decide whether me correct or Einstein or Newton. First, if you see, this is my keynote presentation. I got VVIP protocol during the year November-December 2010 at Pakistan during my keynote lecture on the topic same Newton's gravity and Einstein's gravity, disproving Newton's gravity and Einstein's gravity. And during the year 2019, I gave a talk on the Indian Science Congress. I was invited to India by our former Union Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan ji. Still, he is Chief Minister Edapadi, current Chief Minister Stalin, as well as recently gave another letter to the Bangalore Chief Minister. He is supporting me very well, and I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Harshvardhan ji for his support. That is why I am here. I am an Australian citizen and OCI, overseas citizen of India. Now, here today, I want answers for dark matter. Dark means unknown. There is no answer for dark matter. There is no answer for dark energy. There is no answer why quantum mechanics and relativity are incompatible. At the same time, if you see, gravity is still working on the satellites are working based upon the Newton's gravity, but on the other side, there is no force is not there in the quantum mechanics. And next, if you see why there is no gravity it's not included in the quantum mechanics. There is no definition for an atom. Nobody knows what is this, why quarks are spinning. So far, nobody answered why Earth is spinning, why planets are spinning. So, end of the day, I will give answers for all these questions. And first point, let us start from here. For example, this is the Earth, and you can see Earth is 3/4 of water and 1/4 of land. And you can see 1/4 of land. Let us start with the global warming. What happens when the global warming? When the sunlight is hitting the earth and going back, the earth is heated up. When the earth is heated, water level slightly increases. For example, if we make a cup of tea, we will put the water. After water, what happens? The water boils, slowly the water level increases. And when the water level increases, only after long time, the water becomes heat, but initially the level increases. Same way, the man-made greenhouse gases, not the natural greenhouse gases, the man-made greenhouse gases, when they hit the earth and goes back, and the carbon dioxide gases traps the sunlight and makes the earth warmer and make a blanket. When the earth is warmed up, what happens? Again, the water level try to slightly increase. When the water level increasing, my question is, without a force. For example, if I don't push somebody, they will not fall down. Without a force, there is no impact. So, how the water level comes to the land? For example, we have in the land, we have mountains, we have buildings, tons of cages of buildings, we have buildings thousands of meters. But what happens when the gravity can pull the mountains, when the gravity can pull the human bodies of 50 kgs, why can't the gravity pull 1 or 2 mm of water everywhere? What happens is, when the space is only pushing that, the space is pushing the object. For example, let us assume there is a ball. For example, if you push the ball in the forward direction, the ball goes in the forward direction. If you push the ball to the left, it goes to the left. If you push the ball to the right, it goes to the right. Same way, let us assume the sun and earth. If you see, sun is 333,000 times heavier than the earth. When you compare earth and sun is more heavy. At the same time, when you compare, if you see during the year 2019, a Nobel Prize was given to James Peebles for predicting more than 95% is only empty space, and if you add all the billions and billions of planets and stars together, it counts only less than 5%. It's 4.6%. So he got a Nobel Prize. For example, I am standing in the building. The building is supported by the earth, but the earth is not supported by any other solid. It is floating on space. And now let us compare the earth, the sun, as well as the space. When the space can support billions of stars and planets, earth and sun, they are only a dot. So that when we compare earth, sun at the space, if you compare which is the strongest, space will be strongest, because space is holding and supporting billions and billions of planets and stars. Therefore, as I told you initially, when you push a ball in the forward, it has to go in the forward. At the same time, when there is a more pressure or force on one particular side, the earth has to move only in that particular direction. Therefore, the space is pushing the earth on 360-degree angle and direction. For example, if I stand in the middle, if for example I am the person standing in the middle, around me there are 5 people standing in the first circle, and in the second circle 7 people, so forth there are 100 circles. If everyone are pushing me equally on all direction, what will happen to me? I will get crushed and I will get squeezed and I will try to expel out. Here, I am not expelling myself, I am forced to expel out because people are pushing me. The same way, earth is not moving, earth is forced to move. If you come back here, what happens? Now let us see here what happens. The space, as I told you earlier, space is acting on the mass. For example, earth is taking exactly 365.25 days. It is so far in the past, it has not taken 200 days to complete 1 year, or it has not taken 400 days to complete 1 year. It is taking exactly 365.25 days. The meaning of this is, only it is possible if the pressure is equal in all 360-degree angle and direction. When you connect this with the global warming, what happens? For example, if you give pressure on 360 degrees, the earth will be moving on the same path. Like that, when people are pushing me, I am forced to move because people are pushing me. The same way, earth is moving only because of the pressure of the space on 360-degree angles. Here, what happens when the water level increases? Initially, the space is acting on the mass. When the water level increases, to make the volume equal, the water level tries to increase, but the space is very high, the pressure is very high. The space, what happens is, pushes the water and the water comes to the land. This is the new definition of global warming. There is no change, there is no impact without a pressure. So this is the new definition, and this definition I named as Dr.Kannan change. My supervisor for engineering is Professor Dr.Kannan from Victoria University from Australia, and his origin is India. Therefore, this new definition is named as Dr.Kannan change. If you see next, for the next analogy, as I told you, I'm standing in the middle, people are pushing. So now let us come with a new definition, new example, analogy. For example, Einstein says nothing can travel faster than light. And I want to highlight two analogies, and I want you to tell me whether light is constant or not. For example, let us see, there is a dam. The water is filling the dam. When the water is filling, the water is, for example, let us assume the water is traveling in this direction, and this is the wall. And the water which is hitting the wall will be speedier and stronger than the water which is coming back, because let us assume this is a positive force and the water which is coming back is a negative force. Here, the positive force will be acting as an obstacles. Therefore, when the water is acting as an obstacles, the water which is coming back cannot be faster than the water which is moving in the forward direction. At the same time, the water cannot be constant. The same way, what happens, since the space is pushing the sun, when the space is hitting the sun and the same space is coming back, the space which is acting towards the sun will be more stronger and will be acting as an obstacles for the same space which is coming back. We can take this as a negative force. Therefore, if you see the next example, for example, there is a bulb and you can see tungsten. Electrons are moving in the wire and it crosses the tungsten, and again you can see the light in the bulb. What is happening actually here is, electrons are moving at very high speed. When it approaches towards the tungsten, what happens? The tungsten gives a very high pressure. The tungsten is still alive, it's not dead. Electrons are still moving. At the same time, there is the third event is light. Here, one of the event is light. So you have to understand this very clearly. Same way, if you go back to the sun as well as any star, you have to understand the space is pushing, that is positive force. The space which is coming backwards is known as negative or repulsive force. The same positive force which acts as a tungsten, which gives a very high pressure. Because of the very high pressure, a third event is created, that is light, and the light travels in the negative direction. When the light travels in the negative direction, what happens? It's definitely highly impossible the light to be constant. At the same time, the light cannot travel faster than the any other light cannot be faster than the force which is acting on the positive direction, which is known as space, which is self-compressive surrounding pressure force. Now, this is the main question I have to answer. What Newton told, what Einstein told, and what my theory is, you have to decide whether who is right out of three. The answer is, what happens when the sun collapses? As per Newton, when the sun collapses, all the planets, they travel immediately on a straight line, because as per Newton, gravity is a force. Immediately when the sun collapses, all the planets will be traveling in the straight line immediately. But what Einstein thought nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. It takes about 8 minutes and 20 seconds for the sunlight to reach the earth. So what happens, what he was thinking is, if it takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach the earth, definitely it is highly impossible when the sun collapses, the planets, all other planets will take immediately in the straight line. So what will happen? This earth will be moving 8 minutes 20 seconds in the same path. Only after 8 minutes and 20 seconds, then only the earth will moving in the straight line. But what Einstein told us, once the sun collapses, gravitational waves will be generated and a black hole will be generated. If any object dies, a black hole will be generated and the gravitational waves will be generated. This travels at the speed of the light. So once the gravitational waves reaches the earth, then only, he says, the planet will be moving in the straight line. This is the difference between Newton and Einstein. And Einstein says gravity is not a force. It is like a trampoline in the circus. When somebody jumps, what happens? A bend will create. It's like a space-time curvature. He made space-time a single word. So he says when sun collapses, gravitational waves will be generated, and at the same time it takes 8 minutes 20 seconds, and only after that the earth will be moving in a straight line. This is how Einstein disproved Newton. But now let us assume Newton, Einstein and my theory. If you see here, as I told you, let us assume here what happens when the water is traveling towards the wall. Only when there is a wall, what happens? The water will be moving in the negative direction. What happens if I remove this wall? When I remove this wall, the dam water will be moving only in the one direction, and there will not be any disturbances. Same way, since space is pushing the earth or space is pushing the sun, and the same space is coming back, what will happen if sun dies or collapses? As per my theory, what will happen is, for example, here we see this is the sun, and sun will be moving in the elliptical path. Let us assume the sun collapses. When the sun is there, when it is moving, the space is pushing. Because of the space only, let us assume this is a dam wall. The water, let us assume water as a space. When the water hits the dam wall, the same water moves back. Same way, when the space hits the sun, the same space will be moving in the negative direction because of the high pressure of the space, which is moving, which is acting like a tungsten. The third event, the light is generated. What happens? For example, if sun dies or collapses, nothing will happen. There will not be any gravitational wave generated. Everything will become a space, and this light that will automatically will dissolve in the that will be dissolving in the space. For example, if you take here, when the sun is in the position 1, what happens? There is light only in this area or in this particular area or volume. When the sun comes to the position 2, 1, 3 and 4 will be dark. When the sun comes to the position 3, 4, 1, 2 will be dark. What I am trying to tell from here is, dark matter is 100%. Dark matter is everywhere in the universe. Dark matter is everywhere in the universe. See, when it comes here, this becomes black. When the sun comes to the position 4, all these three become black. But what actually is traveling is only repulsive force. Can we stop the earth for 1 second? Is it possible to stop the earth for 1 second? It is highly impossible to stop the earth for 1 second. That means the spaces keep on pushing. Repulsive force is constantly keep on generating. The day if we can stop the earth or sun for 1 second, what will happen is completely we all will become space, and repulsive force will travel for certain distance, and automatically it will be dissolving the space. So now tell me, who is right? Newton, Einstein or me? Definitely I am telling very clearly, if sun collapses, the gravitational waves will not be created. It is just like a wall. Even the dam wall is removed, what happens? Definitely there is no negative force. The water will be moving in the one single direction, and there will not be a disturbance. Therefore, I conclude here that Newton's gravity as well as Einstein's gravity is completely wrong, and even the definition of black holes is still unknown. Let me come to the black hole later. And now, for example, we have a stone wheel. If you take the stone wheel is keep on rotating. When you want to make the knife sharp, what happens here? When you take the knife towards, sparks are generated. Einstein says light will never die. If light does not die, what happens to the sparks? The spark just will dissolve and dissipate in the space within a fraction of a second. What happens to the light? The sparks. That means light will die. Einstein was wrong in his hypothesis that light will never die. At the same time, if you see the light, when the distance increases, the frequency keeps on decreases, and at one stage the frequency becomes 0 and it becomes black. The next example, space is nothing like a water. If you see here the water, when you keep the water in the very high cooling temperature, the ice cubes will be generated. At the same time, when you keep the water to the normal, ice cube, what happens? Automatically again becomes water. Initially it is water, then it becomes ice cube, again it becomes water. What I am trying to tell here is, initially the space, and after that space becomes objects, and repulsive force is generated. repulsive force keeps on, dies and again merges with the space. So initial is space and origin as well as the end is space. Now I will come to the important concepts, 3 or 4 experiments. Let us take first experiment. The first experiment is known as LIGO experiment and laser interferometer gravitational wave observatory. And this experiment, actually today there are 2 setup and experiments in US, and the third setup will be implemented in India by the year 2025. What happens? Actually, they think that they are observing gravitational waves. As I told you, when a star collapses, definitely black holes will not be generated, or even when the both star collides, definitely gravitational waves will not be generated. Only what happens is, as I told you, it is highly impossible to stop a planet for a second or a star or a sun. So that continuously, because of the space is pushing the objects 360 degree equally, so that there is negative force is generated, they have detected only the repulsive force. This particular experiment, what they have detected is only repulsive force, and I have named this experiment Laser Interferometer Repulsive Force Observatory Experiment. The reason I named this because they are detecting only repulsive force, and I named gravitational waves renamed as Narendra Modi waves. The only reason, I want you to tell me whether I am right or wrong. Narendra Modi is the first Prime Minister who approved for one single experiment 1026 crores for single experiment, and this will be implemented in India by 2025. As a scientist, as a gratitude, since I was invited from Australia to India, since I am a scientist, I never saw a Prime Minister, I saw only an Indian Prime Minister. So to show the gratitude, I named the Narendra Modi waves as gravitational waves as Narendra Modi waves. So you have to decide whether I have done the right thing or wrong. When Narendra Modi approved 1026 crores, all the scientists had a party. They were so happy. But when I gave the exact right theory, and when I renamed the concept, I named as Narendra Modi waves. And if you see the next concept, this is the experiment, gravitational lensing experiment, how Einstein became hero on a single day. Actually, this experiment is only helping me, not Einstein. Let me tell here. During solar eclipse, what happens? During solar eclipse, there is a nearest star. The light from the nearest star crosses the sun. As I told you, when the space is coming back repulsive force, due to the pressure of the compression, the light is one of the event is generated. Intensity of the light will be very high towards the object. As the light keeps on travels, the intensity keeps on decreasing. So what happens here? When the intensity of the light crosses the sun, the intensity of the sunlight will be more than the intensity of the light from the nearest star. So what happens here? For example, let us assume that I am sitting here, a 6-month baby has to cross me, and we have given a straight line. For example, if I am sitting rigidly, the baby definitely cannot push me, and it will take a U-turn, it will take a curved path, and it will come back to the same original position. Because my energy is more than the energy of the baby. The same way, what happens? The starlight, when it reaches the sunlight, the intensity of the starlight decreases and the intensity of the sunlight increases very high. Therefore, what happens? The light has to bend. This is the reason why the light is bending. But overnight, people thought, the scientists thought, there is a bend in the space-time, and they thought Einstein was the hero. Definitely, there is no bend in the space. And what I'm trying to tell here is, the intensity or the frequency of the light decreases near the object. That is the only reason why the light is bending. And I kept this gravitational lensing experiment, I renamed as Harshvardhan lensing experiment. The only reason why I named, because I have sent my theory since 2016 to all the 400 top universities in the world. I have sent my theories to Stephen Hawking multiple times. And during the year February 2014, I sent my theory, I emailed my theory with my research paper, second research paper to Harshvardhan. And after that, during March 2018, at Indian Science Congress, Harshvardhan made a comment that there is a better equation there in Vedas, better equation than Einstein's equation E is equal to mc squared. Actually, the equation was existing since 2015. My first paper was published in 2015. I sent my paper to Ashwardhan in 2017, and everything was there. I've sent my email to Stephen Hawking, and Stephen Hawking colleagues, two of his colleagues has replied me. I'm going to submit all the documents to the press, and I will be submitting all the 3 letters to the press what Harshvardhan gave me. So all the documents, we have all the evidences, and since former Union Science Minister Harshvardhan boldly made a comment which was positive towards me, and this promoted me to India, and this way this theory will be reaching the world, and I have to be very thankful for Dr. Harshvardhan ji. So that is by this is the way how I can show gratitude to him, by naming the experiment as Harshvardhan lensing experiment. And finally, I want to tell one more experiment. So far in the physics, nobody was able to answer why light is having duality in nature, and I will explain in a very simple analogy. For example, let us assume this is a bridge, and 5 people are standing in a row, and 500 people are standing in the column wise, and these 5 people have to cross from the other side of the bridge to this side. What will happen is, if we remove the center row, if all the people from the row, this row, they reaches to the other side, then all the 5 people can travel one by one. This is how the light acts as a particle. If you see the next scenario, and here, second scenario, let us assume that there are no people are in the bridge. So the people, this person can start from the row 5, and he can end at row 1. And this person can start from even row 3, and he can end at anywhere else. So what happens here, the light or electrons behaves like a wave here. And this is how, what happens is, when the magnets are switched on, as I told you, repulsive force will be generated immediately. Electrons and lights are nothing but they both are repulsive forces. It is like people are standing there. When they switched on, automatically there is only one path, and this is how why the electrons and light will be moving to the other side, and it will behave like a particle. When the magnets are switched off, automatically they will behave like a particle, because space will be pushing them, and they can't travel in the straight line. They have to make a deviation. When one light particle moves in the left, the next particle will be moving in the right, and they will keep on changing. So therefore, this is why light is duality in nature. And because the repulsive force is generated, and still in science, repulsive force is not understood. Once you understand the quality of the space is self-compressive surrounding pressure force, definitely you will be able to understand what is repulsive force. And this is why light is duality in nature. And so far in physics, nobody was able to answer this question. And if you see here, escape velocity. Escape velocity is the minimum velocity, for example, for any body to escape from the gravitational pull. So I named that as escape velocity. The only reason is, what happens is, see, the earth is not pulling, as I told you earlier. When the space is pushing, that means experimental observations are correct. But what happens here is, that means we have to inject the same velocity, 11.2 kilometer per second. We have to push the object against the space. Once it crosses 11.2 kilometers, then only the object will be moving in the space, and it will be moving around the earth. Therefore, what happens here is, the earth is not pulling, because we are pushing the object against the space, and this experiment is named as escape velocity. And I will give a simple analogy. For example, I am standing in the middle, and there are 2 pipes of water is coming from both directions, and from this side, if the pressure is equal on both sides of the pipe, and it's hitting on my head, what happens if I just come back the water clashes and a path will be generated. And that path, automatically what happens, the planet, all the satellites are moving only in that path. So that path is generated because of the repulsive force, the repulsive force of the sun, the repulsive force of the earth, the repulsive force of the other planets. In between, a path will be generated, and this path, it's like a house for all the satellite, and this is named as Annamalai Parpati house, and this is the new discovery which I named just yesterday night. As I told you, E is equal to mw squared. This is the definition of physics for 21st century, and as the request of the press meet, I just gave a talk very shortly, and if you have any questions in future, you can start asking me any questions, and I can give whatever answers, whatever questions you ask. I will try to answer all your questions. And I'm telling, this super standard model gives answer for every questions. It can answer dark matter, it gives answer for dark energy, the definition of the mass, why lights are duality in nature, and any question why relativity and quantum mechanics, currently they are incompatible, but this theory gives a single answer. And I've discovered there are 3 electrons and 3 electrons inside protons and 3 electrons inside neutrons, and this will be the dead end of quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics as well as relativity will be having a single theory, and for 21st century and beyond, this theory will take over in next few years, and there will be only one model in physics, that is the super standard model. Thank you for your time. I take the opportunity to thank the media, the Baduga community leaders, as well as other people who are here, who are sitting here, and I will conclude my speech and I will leave for the questions. Thank you. My warm salutations. தமிழ் ரெண்டு மிக்ஸ் பண்ணி பேசிக்கிறாங்க. தமிழில் பேசின கொஞ்சம் அப்படியே மிக்ஸ் பண்ணி பேசி முடிஞ்சளவு பேசிக்கிறேன். சந்திப்பதில் பெருமகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறேன். சரி, இந்த பத்திரிகையாளர் சந்திப்பில் மிகவும் மகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறேன். இது என்னுடைய படுகா கம்யூனிட்டி லீடர் டாக்டர் அண்ணாமலை ஆர் முருகேசன், இவர் கோயம்புத்தூர் படுகா பிரசிடென்ட் சீரடி குமார். இன்னைக்கு என்னுடைய மீட்டிங் எதுக்குன்னா, I have written a research paper E is equal to mw squared definition of physics for 21st century and beyond ன்னு எழுதியிருக்கேன். இந்த பேப்பர் வந்து ஃபிசிஸ்ட் 5 பேர் ரிவ்யூ பண்ணி பீர் ரிவ்யூட் ஜேர்னலில் அக்செப்ட் பண்ண பேப்பருங்க. இந்த பேப்பரில் என்னன்னா, நியூட்டன்ஸ் உடைய கண்டுபிடிப்பு கிராவிடேஷனல் புல், புவியீர்ப்புன்றதை டிஸ்ப்ரூவ் பண்ணியிருக்கோம். ஐன்ஸ்டீன்ஸ் கிராவிட்டியும் E is equal to mc ஸ்கொயர்ன்றது தான் இன்றைக்கி இருக்கிற லேண்ட்மார்க் ஈக்குவேஷன். அது ரெண்டுமே இந்த பேப்பரில் கிளியராக டிஸ்ப்ரூவ் பண்ணியிருக்கோம். இன்றைக்கி பார்த்தீங்கன்னா டார்க் மேட்டர் அப்படின்றதுக்கு எந்த பதிலும் கிடையாது. டார்க் எனர்ஜிக்கு இது வரைக்கும் யாருமே கண்டுபிடிக்கல. லைட் ஏன் டுவாலிட்டி இன் நேச்சர், ஏன் பார்ட்டிக்கலாகவும் இருக்குது, ஏன் வந்து வேவாக இருக்குதுன்னு சொல்லி இது வரைக்கும் யாருமே ஆன்சர் பண்ணல. இது எல்லாருமே புரிகிற மாதிரி சிம்பிளாக ஆன்சர் பண்ணியிருக்கோம். அது இல்லாமல் ஆட்டம்னு சொல்கிறோம், எல்லாருக்குமே ஆட்டம்னா இது வரைக்கும் டெஃபினிஷன் என்னன்னு யாருக்குமே தெரியாது. இன்றைக்கி வந்து ஆட்டம் வந்து குவாக்ஸ்ன்னு சொல்கிறோம். குவாக்ஸில் வந்து 6 வகையான குவாக்ஸ் இருக்குது. அது லெப்டான் ஃபேமிலின்னு சொல்கிறோம். குவாக்ஸ் தனியாக, லெப்டான்ஸ் தனியாக. குவாக்ஸ் வந்து ஏன் ஸ்பின் ஆகுது, பூமி வந்து சுற்றுது, ரொட்டேஷனில் வருது, ஆனால் இது வரைக்கும் ஏன் ஸ்பின் ஆகுதுன்னு யாருக்குமே தெரியாது. அந்த ஸ்பின் ஆகிறதுக்கு பதில் சொல்லி டிஃபைன் பண்ணி அந்த ஸ்பின்னை ஹர்ஷ்வர்தன் ஸ்பின்னிங்கன்னு வச்சுருக்கோம். ஏன்னா ஹர்ஷ்வர்தன் ஜி தான் வந்து என்னை ஆஸ்திரேலியாவிலேருந்து கூப்பிட்டுருக்காரு. நான் உங்கள் ப்ரெஸ் மீட்டில் எல்லா லெட்டர்ஸும் சப்மிட் பண்ணுறேன். 3 லெட்டர் கொடுத்துருக்காருங்க. ஃபர்ஸ்ட் லெட்டர் எடப்பாடிக்கு கொடுத்துருக்காரு. செகண்ட் எடப்பாடி பழனிசாமி ஃபார்மர் ஹானரபிள் சீஃப் மேக் கொடுத்துருக்காருங்க. அதுக்கப்புறம் அந்த கொரோனா பீரியடில் வந்ததுனால நெக்ஸ்ட் என்ன ஆச்சுன்னா, நம்ம இருக்கிற ஹானரபிள் சிஎம் ஸ்டாலின் பேருக்கு வந்து கொடுக்க சொன்னாங்க, கொடுத்தாங்க. அந்த 3rd லெட்டர் வந்து அவர் என்ன சொல்லிட்டாங்க, சீஃப் செக்ரட்டரி மீட் பண்ணோம். இது ஓப்பனாகவே சொல்லிடுறேன், நம்ம எஜுகேஷன் மினிஸ்டர், ஹையர் எஜுகேஷன் மினிஸ்டர் கார்த்திகேயன் அவர் ஒரு ப்ராப்பரான ரெஸ்பான்ஸ் இல்லாதனால இது பெண்டிங் ஆயிடுச்சு. இது ஓப்பனாக சொல்லிடுறேன், இதில் சொல்கிறதுக்கு ஒன்றுமே இல்லை. நான் வந்து நம்ம சிஎம் ஐயாவை பார்க்க எல்லாமே இன்விடேஷன் அனுப்பியிருக்கோம், அதுக்கு நான் வெயிட் பண்ணிகிட்ருக்கேன். அதே மாதிரி பெங்களூர் சிஎம்க்கு லெட்டர் கொடுத்துருக்காங்க. இந்த ப்ரெஸ் மீட் முடிஞ்சதுக்கப்புறம் டைரெக்டாக போய் நான் மீட் பண்ணுறேன்.
ஹர்ஷ்வர்தன்ஜி இவ்வளோ என்னை கூட்டிகிட்டு வந்து ஃபுல் சப்போர்ட் பண்ணதுனால ஆஸ் அ கிராட்டிடியூட் வந்து என்னுடைய கண்டுபிடிப்பு ஹர்ஷ்வர்தன் ஏன் வந்து பிளானட் ஸ்பின் ஆகுதுன்றத ஹர்ஷ்வர்தன் ஸ்பின்னிங்னு கொடுத்துருக்கோம். ஏன் வந்து இந்த கிராவிடேஷனல் லென்சிங் வேவ் என்று அதுக்கு வந்து ஹர்ஷ்வர்தன் லென்சிங் எஃப்டென் கொடுத்துருக்கோம். இன்னைக்கு நம்ம பிரைம் மினிஸ்டர் வந்து எல்லாமே நான் இந்தியன் சயின்ஸ் காங்கிரஸில் பேசும்போது தப்பாக பேசினாங்க, மீடியாலாம் தப்பாக கமெண்ட் சொன்னீங்க. ஆனால் நம்ம பிரைம் மினிஸ்டர் இந்தியன் பிரைம் மினிஸ்டர் ஆஸ்திரேலியாவிலேருந்து இவங்க கூப்பிட்டதுக்கப்புறம் ஆஸ் எ இந்தியன் பிரைம் மினிஸ்டர் ஒரு பர்டிகுலர் எக்ஸ்பெரிமெண்ட்டுக்கு 1026 crores செலவு பண்ணதுனால சயின்டிஃபிக் கம்யூனிட்டி அன்னைக்கு வந்து பார்ட்டி வச்சாங்க, சந்தோஷமாக இருந்தாங்க, பேசினாங்க. அதுக்காக அஸ் அ கிராட்டிடியூட் சரியான தேரி எழுதி அந்த தப்பான தேரியை சரிப்படுத்தி அதுக்கு வந்து நரேந்திர மோடி வேவ்ஸ் அண்ட் வச்சிருக்கேன். ஆஸ் பிகாஸ் he is an Indian Prime Minister, he has invested 1026 crores for the one single experiment, LIGO experiment. அதனால தான் நரேந்திர மோடி வேவ்ஸ் கிராவிடேஷனல் வேவ்ஸ் வச்சிருக்கேன் தவிர வேற எந்த பொலிட்டிக்கல் இன்ஃப்ளூயன்ஸும் எனக்கும் அதுக்கும் சம்மந்தமே கிடையாது. இப்போ பார்த்தீங்கன்னா டார்க் மேட்டர் இதுக்கு யாருமே சொல்லலை. ஸ்பேஸ் பற்றி வேதாத்ரி மகரிஷி அவர் கிளியராக எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணி ஸ்பேஸை டிஃபைன் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க. அந்த கான்செப்டை வச்சு இந்த சயின்ஸில் வந்து எப்படி வந்து கிராவிட்டி டிஸ்ப்ரூவ் பண்ணியிருக்கேன்றது வெரி சிம்பிளாக சொல்லியிருக்கேன். அதனால டார்க் மேட்டரை வேதானன் பேர் வச்சுருக்கோம். டார்க் எனர்ஜியை என்னுடைய செகண்ட் குரு சத்யமூர்த்தி அவர் பேரில் சத்யானன் வச்சுருக்கோம். இதுதான் தவிர வேற எந்த ரீசனும் கிடையாது. இப்போ இன்னைக்கு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா யூஎஸில் வந்து சயின்டிஸ்ட் ஆண்ட்ரூ கேஸ் சொல்லிட்டு என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்கன்னா, ஐன்ஸ்டீனுடைய கிராவிட்டி பிளாக் ஹோல்ஸை ப்ராப்பராக டிஃபைன் பண்ண முடியாது, நியூட்டன்ஸ் கிராவிட்டியை டிஸ்ப்ரூவ் ஆல்ரெடி பண்ணிட்டாங்க. இப்போ எல்லாமே ஒரு சிங்கிள் தியரிக்காக என்ன போட்டி போட்டு ஒரு தியரியாக சப்மிட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. நான் இப்போ சொல்கிறேன், இந்த தியரி இந்த சூப்பர் ஸ்டாண்டர்ட் மாடல் வந்து 2015 பப்ளிஷ் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் பேப்பர் பப்ளிஷ் பண்ணோம். 2017 செகண்ட் பேப்பர் பப்ளிஷ் பண்ணி டாப் 400 யூனிவர்சிட்டிக்கு எல்லா இந்த பேப்பரை அனுப்பியிருக்கோம். நம்ம என்ன பண்ண போகிறோம்னா, இந்த பேப்பர் நாளையிலிருந்து பார்ட் 1 இந்த மாதத்தில் 500 யூனிவர்சிட்டிஸுக்கு நாளையிலிருந்து அனுப்ப போகிறோம். இதுக்கு அடுத்தது நான் டெல்லியில் போய் அடுத்த ப்ரெஸ் மீட் இந்தியன் லெவலில் வைக்க போகிறேன். ஆஸ் ஆஸ்திரேலியன் சிட்டிசனாக இருக்கிறதுனால நெக்ஸ்ட் இயர் ஐ வில் பி ட்ராவலிங் டு நெக்ஸ்ட் மந்த் ஏப்ரல் ஆஃப் எண்ட் ஆஃப் மே ஃபர்ஸ்ட் வீக்கில் ஆஸ்திரேலியா போய் அங்கேயும் ஆஸ் சிட்டிசன் சொல்லி என்னுடைய கடமையை பண்ணணும்னு சொல்றதுக்காக இந்த தெரியும் இது பண்ண போகிறோம். செகண்ட் பார்ட் ஆஃப் திஸ் பேப்பர் இது வந்து ஆஸ்திரேலியா ப்ரெஸ் மீட்டுக்கு முன்னாடி ஒரு வாரத்துக்கு முன்னாடி செகண்ட் பார்ட் நாங்கள் பப்ளிஷ் பண்ணி வேர்ல்டு ஃபுல்லாக 500 டாப் யூனிவர்சிட்டிஸ்க்கு நாங்கள் அனுப்ப போகிறோம். இது வந்து ஒரு ஹிஸ்டாரிக்கல் டே. E is equal to mw squared, definition of physics for 21st century and beyond. இது இந்த தமிழ்நாட்டில் பிறந்ததுக்கு உலகத்தில் மனுஷனாக பிறந்து சந்தோஷப்படுறேன். அதுவும் தமிழ்நாட்டில் பிறந்த ஒரு தமிழனா இதை வந்து கொண்டு போய் சேர்த்துறதுக்கு உங்களுடைய எல்லா ஆதரவும் தேவை, சப்போர்ட்டும் தேவைன்னு சொல்லி உங்களை எல்லாத்தையும் வணக்கம் சொல்லி இதோட முடிச்சுக்கிறேன். நன்றி, வணக்கம். நான் வந்து ஹர்ஷ்வர்தன் சாருடைய லெட்டரை கொண்டு போய் டைரெக்டாக சிஎம்க்கு அனுப்புனாங்க. லெட்டர் சிஎம் ஆஃபீஸ்லேருந்து கார்த்திகேயன் சார் ஆஃபீஸ்க்கு வருது. நான் பிரின்சிபல் செக்ரட்டரி பார்க்குறேன், அவர் கார்த்திகேயன் சாரை போய் பார்க்க சொல்கிறாரு. சீஃப் செக்ரட்டரி போய் லெட்டர் கொடுக்குறேன். சீஃப் செக்ரட்டரி சார் வந்து இமீடியட்டாக லெட்டரை வந்து ஃபார் ப்ராப்பர் ஆக்ஷன் இமீடியட் ஆக்ஷன் எழுத அனுப்புகிறாரு. ஆனால் இவர் வந்து நான் ஒரு 10 தடவை ட்ரை பண்ணேன், எனக்கு 5 நிமிஷம் உட்கார வச்சு பேசவே கிடையாது. போய் வைஸ் சான்சலரை பார்க்க சொல்கிறாரு. இதுக்கு முன்னாடி இருந்த பிரின்சிபல் செக்ரட்டரி அபூர்வா அவங்க வந்து 10 நிமிஷம் டைம் கொடுத்தாங்க. இந்த தியரி எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணும்போது 45 நிமிஷம் ஆயிடுச்சு. ஷி வாஸ் ஸோ மச் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டட். ஒருவேளை கவர்மெண்ட் சேஞ்ச் ஆகலைன்னா இந்நேரத்தில் ஒரு சயின்டிஃபிக் ஆஃபீஸர் உட்கார்ந்துருக்கலாம். இந்த கவர்மெண்ட் சேஞ்ச் ஆயிடுச்சு, கொரோனா வந்துருச்சு. அதனால இந்த ப்ரெஸ் மீட் முடிச்சுட்டு நெக்ஸ்ட் ஸ்டேஜ் நான் ஹர்ஷ்வர்தன் ஜியை பார்த்து என்ன பண்ணணும், என்ன முடிவு பண்ணணுன்றதை பார்க்குறேன். பெங்களூர் சிஎம்க்கு லெட்டர் கொடுத்துருக்காரு. டைரெக்டாக பெங்களூர் சிஎம்ஐ இமீடியட்டாக போய் பார்க்கணும்.